if you are a spiritual being, if you really do belong to the Lord, then there is something about you that transcends your physical being. There is something about you that transcends your personality. There is something that transcends your soulish contribution to your actions and your behaviors. You, brothers and sisters, are a spiritual being. And Scripture talks about people being a spiritual being. And one of the things that was really interesting about how Yeshua related to humanity is he taught from a position of truth. And the position of truth that he taught from was that the spirit of humanity is dead unless it becomes resurrected. And the way for it to become resurrected is for us to seek and ask God to make our spirit being alive. So it is a kind of a shock to consider that each one of us are born as a baby with a live biomachine, aka a body, with the ability to develop a soul, to develop intellect, to operate educationally, but that our spirit has to end up being infused with life at a certain point as we are going along our journey and our path. Some of you sought God when you were children, and you asked for God to make your spirit being alive. Others of you made it into your teenage years, and you had an encounter where God ended up making your spirit alive. And there are even those who get to their adult years, and at some point in time, after a great deal of circumstance, sometimes a fair amount of pain, sometimes having run for weeks, months, years, and decades, you get to a point where you ask for God to make your spirit alive. And this is known in the biblical framework, in the biblical language, as becoming born again. And God is willing for those who ask him to make you spiritually alive. And I'm so excited for when this happens. And sometimes people do this, and then later on they find a congregation or a community to worship with, and this ends up promoting the growth and the development of the spiritual being. Other times people have been in the body of Messiah for years and possibly even decades before their spiritual component of their life is made alive. But I really want to encourage you that if you're not entirely sure that you have had a transaction where God has made you spiritually alive, that prayer, which is you're talking to God and God's talking to you as well, happens, is the transaction by which we come before God. And Yeshua is the one who made us aware that the spirit component in our entity of who we are was dead. And it's through asking God in the power of Yeshua to make us spiritually alive that the transaction happens. And those who approach God in the power of Yeshua and recognizing who Yeshua is for us and asks for God to make us alive spiritually, this is a transaction that God is glad to make available to you. And maybe immediately you will recognize that something has happened if you ask God to spiritually resurrect you and spiritually raise you to life and make your spirit being alive in the power of Messiah Yeshua. Or maybe you'll do it and you're not even entirely sure that something has happened, but days, weeks, months later, you'll going back to that date and that time, I can see how things flowered, how things opened up, how things transformed and changed, how my world started to be different because of what happened. And if you're a somewhat stoic personality, God will make you spiritually alive in a fashion that makes someone who's stoic come to life in a fashion that works. If you're a very emotional or demonstrative personality, God will probably meet you in a fashion that makes sense for you. But I just really want to encourage you, because if you haven't thought about the spiritual component and the spiritual aspect, and if you've never had a flowering and an opening up and a resurrection of the Spirit of God, as Yeshua taught that God is capable of doing in us, through us, and through the power of Messiah's ministry and his very person, you might not know to ask, and you might be interested. So with all of this, I just really want to encourage you that this exists, this is going, this is powerful, and this can open up all sorts of other opportunities for God to do amazing things. Shalom.